Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Karunapurna Sudabdhe Kabalita Ghana Vishwarupa Kiranavalya Arunachala Paramatman Aruno Bhavachitta Kanja Suvikasaya Vande Sri Ramanarushe Acharyasya Padabjam Yo me darshayadhisham Bhantam dhvantamatityaha Akhanda Satchidanande Parabrahmanya Laukike Vilasantam Gurum Nomim Sarvada Hridyaham Bhaje. Day by Day with Bhagavan, episode number 11. 17 to 1946 morning. Mr. P.D. Shroff arrived from Delhi this morning. He said to Bhagavan, "When I am away from you, I feel so miserable. While I am at Delhi, far away, I feel such a pull, as though you are a cruel lover keeping yourself away. Then I must come here at any cost. But when I come here, you are like an ordinary person. What is this?" Bhagavan said, "It is always like that. When one is separated, one wants to come." Afternoon. A visitor asked Bhagavan, "How has Srishti, creation, come about? Some say it is due to karma. Others say it is the Lord's leela or sport. What is the truth?" Bhagavan, various accounts are given in books, but is there creation? Only if there is creation, we have to explain how it came about. All that we may not know, but that we exist now is certain. Why not know the I and the present and then see if there is a creation? Some young men who had come with an introduction from the Ramakrishna mission at Madras asked Bhagavan, "Which is the proper path for us to follow?" Bhagavan, when you speak of a path, where are you now? And where do you want to go? If these are known, then we can talk of the path. Know first where you are and what you are. There is nothing to be reached. You are always as you really are, but you don't realize it. That is all. A little while after, one of the visitors asked Bhagavan, "I am now following the path of Japa. Is that all right?" Bhagavan, "Yes, it is quite good. You can continue in that." The gentleman who asked about creation said, "I never thought I was going to have the good fortune of visiting Bhagavan. But circumstances have brought me here, and I find in his presence, without any effort on my part, I am having Shanti. Apparently, getting peace does not depend on our effort. It seems to come only as the result of grace." Bhagavan was silent. Meanwhile, another visitor remarked, "No, our effort is also necessary, though no one can do without grace." After some time, Bhagavan remarked, "Mantra japa after a time leads to a stage when you become mantramaya, that is, you become that whose name you have been repeating or chanting. First you repeat the mantra by mouth, later you do it mentally. First you do this dhyana with breaks, later you do it without any break. At that stage you realize you do dhyana without any effort on your part. That dhyana is your real nature. Till then, effort is necessary. In the evening, Kasiyamma's party again came to Bhagavan, and after Parayana sang a few stotras. Before leaving, Kasiyamma approached Bhagavan and stood before him for a few minutes, during which Bhagavan was looking and yet not looking at her. I mean, he gave her one of those abstract looks which are not unusual with him. Then the lady asked Bhagavan, "May I have from Bhagavan's lips some words on Swanubhava or personal experience of self-realization?" Bhagavan kept quiet, and after a few minutes, K and her party took leave and went away. After she went, Bhagavan remarked, "She was herself singing about Swanubhava so far. Not that she does not know. She wants to hear about it from me." 18 to 46 morning. Bhagavan was perusing a Telugu version of Tiruchuri Sthala Puranam made by Nagamma from Viswanath's Tamil story. Afternoon. Old attendant and librarian T.S. Rajagopal came on a visit. Bhagavan told me. He is on his inspection tour, or recently has become an inspector for Madras Mail with Trichy as headquarters. He is inspecting us now. We are getting a copy of the mail daily now. The local agent told us that under orders of the inspector he was sending us a copy. 24 to 46 morning. About 10:30 a.m., Mrs. Talayar Khan came near Bhagavan, stood at his feet and asked, "May I say a few words, Bhagavan?" and continued, "I have a great friend, Mrs. W., wife of a prominent official in Los Angeles. In 1942, when I was here, I received a letter from her while I was sitting in this hall. It was a heart-rending letter in which she detailed how her husband fell in love with another woman, got a divorce decree, and married a new woman. She was a most beautiful woman, Bhagavan, and they had already a girl about 17 years old. She was a great society woman, and it was impossible that any event of any social importance would take place without her being there. So she felt that grief immensely and wrote it all. I was moved terribly and keenly felt for her and prayed mentally to Bhagavan for her relief. I wrote back to her, sending her a small photo of Bhagavan and told her, 'Don't be downcast. Your husband will come back to you. I am now with such and such a great personage. I am sending you a small picture of him. Have it on your table. I shall daily pray to him on your behalf. You too pray to him. You will see that you get relief.' But the friend, what do they know about Bhagavan and such things, was disconsolate. She wrote back, 'What you say is impossible. He won't come back.' I wrote again, 'Nothing is impossible with our Bhagavan. So just go on as I have advised you to do.' And now, Bhagavan, I have her letter by airmail today that her husband has come back to her and she is going to set up a new home again. She writes, 'The impossible has happened. Your gentleman,' meaning Bhagavan, 'has really worked a miracle. Now I and my husband must come and see him. We want to fly and visit your master, though the passage costs a lot. Please let me know whether there is a hotel there where we can come and stay.' I have always been praying to Bhagavan for this friend, and I am glad Bhagavan has done this for her. I feel so grateful and was moved to tears when reading this letter here now. I added, "What is there impossible for Bhagavan?" and told Bhagavan, "Only last evening Shroff was complaining to me about his having to go to Delhi. He said, it is the hopelessness of the situation that pains me most. There does not seem to be any chance of my coming here again. If I was certain that once in 6 months or even once a year I could be visiting here, I would not feel the separation so much. It is the impossibility of it all that worries me." And I told Shroff the same thing that Mrs. T told her friend. There is nothing impossible at all where Bhagavan is concerned. You may get transferred to Madras. You may grow so rich suddenly as to possess a small airplane of your own. What is there that cannot happen by His grace? Mrs. Osborne told Bhagavan, Kitty has written a letter and in it has sent her love to Bhagavan. Bhagavan, turning to me, said, "She has become shy now. When she was going, she made her father come and tell me her message. I hope Bhagavan won't forget me." And I told her, "You don't forget Bhagavan and Bhagavan won't forget you." 25 to 1946 afternoon. Mrs. Talayar Khan introduced a group, Miss Sen and some others, a captain or Major Rao who was going to marry this Miss Sen and another lady from Indore as friends of her sister Rita. Then I told Bhagavan that this Rita has had a miracle in her life and made Mrs. T tell the story. Mrs. T thereupon told Bhagavan the following: "Bhagavan, we got this Rita a seat in a medical college and hospital in London for training as a nurse through the kind offices of Lady Willingdon, who was then vicereine here. The matron of the hospital there, however, disliked my sister from the beginning because of her color and treated her as dirt. My sister patiently bore all this and always prayed to Saint Teresa, in whom she had great faith. Her troubles came to a climax in this way. When it was about a month or so for her examination, she accidentally hurt her eye with the spray of an acid when she was opening a bottle of the acid in the laboratory. The eye had to be kept in bandage for several days, and it was not yet all right, even close to the examination. But on the night before the examination, after she had gone to sleep, my sister had the following strange experience. She felt she heard a slight footstep and that someone opened the door and was coming gently towards her. She could even hear the rustle and swish of the dress as the visitor approached. The visitor came by the bedside and removed my sister's bandage. My sister opened her eyes and saw her favorite Saint Teresa standing by her with a scroll in her hand. The saint thereon unrolled the scroll, and there my sister saw all the questions that were going to be asked in her examination next day. After my sister had ample time to go through the questions one by one and to remember them, the vision passed away, and my sister got up, woke up her friend in the next room, asked her to find from the books all the answers needed and to read them out to her. The next day, my sister also attended the examination, found all the questions the same as revealed to her the previous night, answered them, and not only passed her examination contrary to the expectations of her matron, but even won the gold medal for proficiency in that year. When Mrs. T concluded the above account, I said, "Miracles have not ceased to happen. They are happening even now to those who pray and have faith." 26 to 46 morning. A visitor told Bhagavan, "Even in my dream, I sometimes feel that I am dreaming. That is, I am conscious that it is a dream and that a fall, for instance, there cannot hurt me, and so on. How is that?" Bhagavan, "How can that be? Even in a dream, there must be hurt consequent on a fall. On the other hand, if you are aware it is a dream, you are no longer dreaming. At the best, it may be the transition stage when you are awaking from the dream state." Another visitor told Bhagavan that some of his dream experiences stood very firmly rooted in his mind, while others were not remembered at all. Bhagavan remarked, "All that we see is a dream, whether we see it in the dream state or in the waking state. On account of some arbitrary standards about the duration of experience and so on, we call one experience dream experience and another waking experience. With reference to reality, both the experiences are unreal." A man might have such an experience as getting anugraha, grace, in his dream, and the effect and influence of it on his entire subsequent life may be so profound and so abiding that one cannot call it unreal, while calling real some trifling incident in the waking life that just flits by, is casual, of no moment whatever, and is soon forgotten. Once I had an experience, a vision or dream, whatever you may call it. I and some others, including Chadwick, had a walk on the hill. Returning, we were walking along a huge street with great buildings on either side. Showing the street and the buildings, I asked Chadwick and the others whether anybody could say that what we were seeing was a dream, and they all replied, "Which fool will say so?" And we walked along and entered the hall, and the vision or dream ceased, or I woke up. What are we to call this? Next, the talk drifted to the self being pratyaksha, self-evident, and Bhagavan then related how the song Atma Vidya was composed. He said, "Any Vidya is for the purpose of knowing something. If it is so self-evident as to render the well-known classical example of Hastamalakam, or a gooseberry on the palm, a false analogy, as Muruganar had put it, where was the need for Atma Vidya, whether you call it easy or not?" What Muruganar meant to say was, in the classical example, a hand is necessary, a hand that will and can feel a fruit on it, a fruit, an eye that can see, a person that has already known what fruit it is, and so on and so forth. But for knowing the self, nothing at all except the self is needed. In sleep, for instance, nothing at all exists for us except ourselves, and we admit we existed during that sleep. On waking, we say, "I slept," and none of us believes there are two eyes, the one that slept and the one that is awake now. In the classical example, all these must exist to make the fruit self-evident. All these depend on or derive from the self and make the fruit self-evident. How much more self-evident must the self itself be? Anyhow, there it was. Muruganar had written the Pallavi and Anupallavi and wanted the Charanams. He said he could not possibly complete the song as somehow no more lines would come to him, and so requested me to complete it. Thereupon I wrote this song. First I wrote only one stanza or charanam, but Muruganar wanted at least four. Thereupon I made three more. Finally I recollected I had not made any mention of Annamalai, and so made a fifth charanam also, and made mention of Annamalai in it, as Ponnambalam is mentioned in the stanzas of the song in Nandanar story, on which our song is modeled. A squirrel came to Bhagavan, and he was feeding it with cashew nut pieces as usual. Turning to me, he said, "Shroff sent some cashew nuts yesterday and said they were intended for my dumb friends." I said, "Probably Bhagavan would object to our calling these squirrels dumb." Bhagavan said, "They communicate with me. Sometimes I am in a nap. They come and draw attention to their presence by gently biting my fingertips. Besides, they have a lot of language of their own. There is one great thing about these squirrels. You may place any amount of food before them. They will just eat what they need and leave the rest behind. Not so the rat, for instance. It will take everything it finds and stock it in its hole." I remarked, "Possibly it would be said that the squirrel is a less intelligent creature than the rat because it does not plan or provide for the future but lives in the present." Bhagavan said, "Yes, yes, we consider it intelligence to plan and live wretchedly like this. See how many animals and birds live in this world without planning and stocking. Are they all dying?" Bhagavan then began speaking of monkeys and said, "They too don't build nests or stock things. They eat what they can find and go and perch on trees when night falls. They are quite happy. I have known something about their organization, their kings, laws, regulations. Everything is so perfect and well organized. So much intelligence behind it all. I even know that tapas is not unknown to monkeys. A monkey whom we used to call Mottai Paiyan was once oppressed and ill-treated by a gang. He went away into the forest for a few days, did tapas, acquired strength and returned. When he came and sat on a bough and shook it, all the rest of the monkeys who had previously ill-treated him and of whom he was previously mortally afraid were now quaking before him. Yes, I am clear that tapas is well known to monkeys." 27 to 46 morning. With the post arrived a composition from the pen of Chinta Dikshitulu in Telugu entitled "In the First Place, Who Are You, Ramana?" After perusing the letters, Bhagavan asked Balaram to read it out in the hall, and the same was done. The gist of the paper is, you ask everybody who puts a question, "Who are you that put this question?" But who are you? There is sufficient justification for one to regard you as Krishna or as Kanda or as the goddess who became merged in Arunachala as Ardhanarishwara or again as Dakshinamurti. In fact, we can go on imagining as so many other gods also. Again, when you sit with your palms turned to the fire by your side, you look like giving abhaya, that is, protection from fear. Now, is it only to those in the hall you are giving abhaya, or to all in the world? It must be the latter, for you have come into the world to give abhaya to all. 1-3-46 Morning. Mr. Osborne said, Bhagavan, last evening Nuna, that is his daughter, about 4 years old, told us, Dr. Syed is my best friend in the world. Thereupon we asked her, what about Bhagavan? And she replied, Bhagavan is not in the world. Bhagavan was surprised at this remark of the child, and involuntarily his finger rose to his nose, and holding it there, he said, what a sage remark for a child to make! Even great men cannot understand what the remark means. They ought to have asked her, where else is Bhagavan if not in the world? Thereupon Mr. Osborne said, yes, we did ask her. She said, Bhagavan is out of the world. Dr. Syed asked Bhagavan, does not total or complete surrender require that one should not have left in him the desire even for liberation or God? Bhagavan, complete surrender does require that you have no desire of your own, that God's desire alone is your desire, and that you have no desire of your own. Dr. Syed, now that I am satisfied on that point, I want to know what are the steps by which I could achieve surrender. Bhagavan, there are two ways. One is looking into the source of I and merging into that source. The other is feeling I am helpless by myself. God alone is all powerful, and except throwing myself completely on Him, there is no other means of safety for me, and thus gradually developing the conviction that God alone exists and the ego does not count. Both methods lead to the same goal. Complete surrender is another name for Jnana or liberation. Three 46 Morning. A visitor quoted verse 33 of chapter 3 in Bhagavad Gita and asked Bhagavan, are we then to do nothing and simply allow the senses to go their own way? Bhagavan, it only means actions will go on according to the gunas or prakriti of the man. They cannot be prevented. But that is the very reason why man should acquire Jnana and thus become unaffected by the consequences of such action. The verse says, acquire Jnana and be unattached to the actions and their consequences. Bhagavan said this after saying, let us see in what connection this verse occurs, and looking up the verse in question. Then I remembered that once before I asked Bhagavan about this very same verse, and then Bhagavan pointed out to me the very next verse in which we are directed not to yield to the senses. I mentioned this for the guidance of the visitor. Bhagavan had told me then that if the two verses were taken together, it could not be contended that Gita teaches don't restrain or attempt to restrain the senses, because what does restraint avail? Evening. A visitor asked Bhagavan, when we get a dream, we emerge out of it without any effort on our part. If this life of ours is a dream, as it is said to be, then how is it that we have to make efforts and are called upon to make efforts to end this dream and wake into Jnana? Bhagavan, we do not know about sleep or dream, but we know about the present state, the waking state. Let us try and understand it. Then all will become clear to us. Who is it that undergoes sleep, dream, and waking states? You say we must get out of ignorance and wake into Jnana. Who is it that has the ignorance, and ignorance of what? When you inquire into the source of I, all doubts will be set at rest. Five, 3:46 morning. Bhagavan seems to have said yesterday, it would be good if one can find out what Nuna meant or felt when she said Bhagavan is not in the world but out of it. So Mr. Osborne brought the following writing today and handed it over to Bhagavan. I asked Nuna what she meant by Bhagavan is not in the world. At first she was too shy to say anything. I said, you think Dr. Syed is in the world, don't you? Nuna said yes. Where then is Bhagavan if he is not in the world? I asked. Nuna replied, in the ashramam and in heaven, and added after a pause, Bhagavan whom we cannot see is everywhere. If we are very good, we can see him. Everybody is Bhagavan, but not as good as Bhagavan. How much is pure intuition and how much is what she understood and remembers from occasional talks, it is difficult to say. Sometimes there is no doubt that it is mere intuition. For instance, once at Kodaikanal, when saying good night to her, I asked her whether she had been praying, and she said, now I want to sleep. Sleeping is praying. After seeing the above, Bhagavan and Balaram were both saying, sleeping is praying is a very sane remark. I could not understand and so asked Bhagavan about it. He explained that they understood it to mean sleeping or stilling the mind is real prayer. By sleep should be understood, he told me, the sleepless sleep we often hear mentioned in Tamil books. Example, Thungamal Thungichugam Perumadekkalam. When will I attain the bliss of sleeping yet not sleeping? Evening. When I entered the hall, Bhagavan was talking to Lakshmi, our Venkatu's child, of whom I am very fond. I told Bhagavan there was a proposal some time back that Lakshmi should be left with her mother's sister at Irukkur. They seem to have thought the girl would be better off there, where they require a girl badly for petting and rearing, instead of here, where she would be only one of several children. But I did not like the idea at all. When children born somewhere in Poland and other countries come here and grow up in the atmosphere of our ashramam, I could not reconcile myself to the idea of our Lakshmi born here being brought up elsewhere. Bhagavan said, the Tata, the grandfather, namely Pichu Iyer, went to Irukkur. And do you think she would stay there after seeing her Tata? If Tata is there, then alone she would stay there. On this, Balaram quoted from Shakuntala passages in which Shakuntala takes leave of the hermitage and Kanva Maharshi addresses the flowers and says, "She who used to water you first before taking her food herself, she who would not pluck you, however dearly she loved flowers and liked to wear them, she is now leaving you for her husband's house. Bless her." Balaram also quoted from some other book a passage which says, "We, people of the world, have to make great efforts to draw the mind from the objects of sense or from the world and to fix it in the heart on God. But you, Radha, in whose heart God is fully caught, you have to make effort to get away from God." On this, Bhagavan remarked, that is the stage of the Jnani. He can't escape the self or go away from it. Where else to go, as all that he knows is the self which he himself is. Mr. Desai asked Bhagavan, how is it that some saints who must also have realized the self say that it is not desirable for one to merge in the self, but one must have some slight individuality left to enjoy the bliss of the self, just as the fly, to enjoy the honey, should not fall into the honey and be lost in it, but must sit on the edge and go on sipping the honey. Thereupon I told Mr. Desai, Bhagavan has told us that the analogy is wrong and misleading. The honey is something inert and unconscious. A conscious being is required to taste it and enjoy it. On the other hand, the self is consciousness and bliss itself, and it is absurd to argue that when one becomes that, the self, one will not be able to enjoy bliss, and that one must remain separate to enjoy it. Mr. Desai asked, why then have some saints said so? That is our difficulty. I replied, you must ask those saints. Bhagavan has given us his opinion quite unambiguously that it is not necessary to remain separate to enjoy complete bliss, and that on the other hand, the bliss cannot be complete till the merger in the self is complete. 6/3/1946 afternoon. When I entered the hall, Bhagavan was telling Balaram, different books and different schools have located the Kundalini at different centers in the body. While the usual center with which it is associated is Mooladhara, there are books which locate it in the heart and other books which locate it in the brain. Thereupon I asked Bhagavan, you say different people or schools differ on this matter. But as Mr. Desai asked Bhagavan yesterday, the difficulty we feel is this. If people who have mere book or theoretical knowledge say such contradictory things, we may simply brush them aside. But when they come from persons whom we regard as saints who have realized the self, that is, those who have had direct or immediate knowledge of the self, the doubt assails us, why such difference of opinion among saints? Yesterday, I tried to silence Desai simply by saying, if others have given opinions different from Bhagavan's, you must ask them why they gave such opinions, not Bhagavan. Bhagavan has told us what is the correct opinion. But now, I too want to know why different saints differ on such important points. Thereupon, Bhagavan was pleased to say, they may be self-realized saints and they may know the truth, but they have to suit their teaching to those who ask for it, and the differences in the teachings ought to be explained by the differences in the pakwa or fitness of those to whom such teachings are addressed. Balaram was reading a collection of Upanishads and coming across a passage dealing with Sahaja Samadhi or Sahaja Sthiti asked me, "Did you not say that Mr. K.S. Ramaswamy Shastri once told you that he did not believe in Sahaja state and that Sahaja state is not mentioned in the earlier books but is a later innovation? I find it mentioned here in the Varaha Upanishads themselves." I said, "Yes, he thought so. He argued with me. How can one be in two planes at the same time? Either he sees the Absolute and nothing else, or sees the world and then does not see the Absolute." And he said that the Sahajasthiti is not mentioned in the earlier books but is found only in later works. Balaram said, "Where are these two planes for the Jnani? He is only in one plane, and so there is no point in Mr. Shastri's argument that one can't be in two planes at the same time." I said, "How can we say the Jnani is not in two planes? He moves about with us like us in the world and sees the various objects we see. It is not as if he does not see them. For instance, he walks along. He sees the path he is treading. Suppose there is a chair or table placed across the path. He sees it, avoids it, and goes around. So, have we not to admit he sees the world and the objects there, while of course he sees the self?" Bhagavan thereupon said, "You say the Jnani sees the path, treads it, comes across obstacles, avoids them, etc. In whose eyesight is all this? In the Jnani's or yours?" He continued, "He sees only the self and all in the self." Thereupon I asked Bhagavan, "Are there not illustrations given in our books to explain this Sahaja state clearly to us?" Bhagavan: "Why not? There are. For instance, you see a reflection in the mirror and the mirror. You know the mirror to be the reality and the picture in it a mere reflection. Is it necessary that to see the mirror we should cease to see the reflection in it? Or again, take the screen illustration. There is a screen. On that screen, first a figure appears. Before that figure on the same screen, other pictures appear, and the first figure goes on watching the other pictures. If you are the screen and know yourself to be the screen, is it necessary not to see the first figure and the subsequent pictures? When you don't know the screen, you think the figure and pictures to be real. But when you know the screen and realize it is the only reality on which, as substratum, the shadows of the figure and pictures have been cast, you know these to be mere shadows. You may see the shadows, knowing them to be such, and knowing yourself to be the screen which is the basis for them all." Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Sarvam Sri Ramanarpanamastu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.